Hello, 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 and welcome to our SPED panel. So we're going to hop on in today. We do have a sign-in. This is only for people who are here live. So if you are watching the recording, there's no need for you to sign in, but you can definitely look at the amazing information that our panel is going to present. So I'm Desiree Alexander. I am the founder, CEO of Educator Alexander Consulting. These are all of the ways that you can get to me. I'm going to be the one sending you the email after this if you sign in. So you'll have my contact information, but this is my contact information as well. So if you want to take a picture of that, you can, or if you're like, baby, I don't even know how to do it. That's okay. You're going to get an email from me after this, and I will be able to give you any contact information you want. So you can ask me any questions, get any help. I am here for you guys. So these are some of our upcoming webinars. Now today you're in the amazing SPED panel. We also have an admin panel coming up. So if you're interested in educational leadership, being a principal, being a district level leader, things like that, we're going to have these 5 amazing people that you see on the screen come and talk to us about issues with educational administration. So that's something you definitely want to be there for. We also have having fun with Autocrat. That's not the real flyer, but it's all about creating automated certificates and things like that with a Google form. So the people fill out the form, it automatically puts it on a certificate. So that's something that's going to be really good. Then we have classroom management, backed by popular demand, that I'm teaching. It's a really good session. It's a 2-hour session, so that's going to be in July. Notice the link at the bottom. You can go to register for all these right there at edalex.net/events. And if you're part of my newsletter, if you get my newsletter, you know I always sing them all out on my newsletter. You can also submit questions for the panel. I did have some great questions come in for the SPED panel, so we're about to go through those. You can also submit questions for the admin panel using this link, and it's also on my website. So edalex.net/questions. All right, somebody is not muted. All right, I'm going to mute all right quick. All right, so and then I'm going to turn off mics in a second once the panel gets started. Okay, so moving on. Welcome to the panel. Be the master of your craft, what SPED teachers need to know. Okay, so this is where you come to get your questions answered. This is the nitty gritty. We're going to be very 100% real with you, but we're going to make sure that we are uplifting, especially during this time. We want to make sure that we're giving you positive information about being a SPED teacher. This is my panel. I'm going to have them introduce themselves in a second, but we have an amazing panel. I am only the moderator. I'm going to shut my mouth and throw away the key and let them do their thing. You can see their email addresses are on here, so you may want to take a picture of this screen. So if you're like, man, I really like what Stephanie's saying. Oh my goodness, Lydia blew my mind. Tawanga, I don't know where you've been all my life. Jessica, what? You can email them and say, hey, I have another question for you or whatever. So they're here for you. They have become part of your PLN, whether you want them to or not. They're part of your crew. So here you go. You can take a picture of this. In the email that I send, I'm going to CC them. So you'll have these email addresses there too. So just to let you know. So there's your crew. Take it in, and they're going to introduce themselves in a second. So what I want to do is I am going to go ahead and let's see. I'm going to make sure that you cannot unmute yourselves. So my panel, let me turn that back on. My panel, go ahead and unmute yourselves. If you're like, am I on the panel? You're not. You're not on the panel. Okay. So panel, go ahead and unmute themselves. All right. So I'm going to make sure that participants cannot unmute themselves. I think Lucille, I'm going to mute you back, Lucille. All right. So we got Jessica, Lydia. Okay. I think everybody's unmuted that needs to be. All right. And I'm going to bring up the video panel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let them introduce themselves right now. So I'm going to start with Stephanie, just going down the, going alphabetical order. Stephanie, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Okay. So I am Stephanie Filardo. I am currently in St. Louis, Missouri. Some of you are probably looking at that saying, math teacher, technology trainer. What the heck is she doing here this morning, right? Well, my background is actually in special education. I wanted to be that math teacher who could really help students in the regular education environment as well. So I've taught special education. I'm actually currently teaching gifted for a gifted program where we have lots of twice exceptional students.
Thank you. Lydia?
Well, good morning. My name is Lydia James Wells. I've been a special education teacher for 15 years. I've taught everything from inclusion to severe, and I'm currently working at a school named Glen Oaks High School in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Awesome. Jessica?
Okay, my name is Jessica Reed. I am a middle school special ed ELA resource teacher, so I do 6th through 8th grade, so I have 3 preps throughout the day. And I'm also our lead SPED teacher. And I've taught everything from regular ed, kindergarten, all the way to being a high school paraprofessional for math. So I've got a little bit of knowledge of everything.
All right, and Tawana.
Good morning. I'm Tawana Watley-Dushime. I have also taught as a resource teacher, and currently I'm a middle school community-based teacher in a middle high school combo school in EBR, which is East Baton Rouge Parish.
Okie dokie. So panel, we are going to get to the first question today. And our first question is, what are some of the challenges that you have faced when advocating for your students, and how do you overcome those challenges? Whoever wants to jump in to answer.
Well, I'll go first. The biggest challenge I've had for some of my students is just acceptance of general ed teachers. Just because my students are not able to write as well as they verbally can tell you something, they do know the information. Sometimes it's hard for general ed teachers to understand that not every student's going to give them a perfect answer. And you sometimes have to help figure out, as a SPED teacher, be the advocate to help figure out what way the teachers can get to know their students better, if that makes sense. Because I know my students so well, by the time they finish with me, I've had them for 3 years, and I can help the general ed teachers, I guess, get to know them better. But sometimes you have general ed teachers who are like, I don't want to deal with this. Like, they're yours, they're not mine. You know, so that's been a struggle for me.
And I think also too, because the population of kids that we service is so small, sometimes you kind of feel overlooked that, you know, we're going to get to you. We will. We haven't forgotten, but we'll get to you later. Or just making sure that our kids have the same choices that general ed kids have. It sometimes requires us to be a little more assertive to make sure that our kids are having access to all those same things, whether it's technology. And my kids, the category of kids that I teach are significant disabilities. So they're not always in those general ed classes throughout the day. So it's a constant reminder to make sure that they're getting same access to information about programs, activities at school, or whatever. So we're advocating for them.
Because they focused on the classroom, and I'm a community-based teacher, which is the students go out into the community for the majority of learning. So we go to work, and then we do other things in the community as far as post offices and libraries and all those types of things. But a major roadblock for us sometimes is to get community buy-in to allow our classes to come in and, you know, work or volunteer basically to get vocational skills. So it's a lot of legwork, a lot of begging almost, you know, building relationships and getting people in the community to trust us that will watch the kids. I mean, they won't run around your store or destroy anything. And, you know, when they finally let us in, they see that the kids can produce good work. So that's one of our major problems or issues that we have in the community-based setting. It's just not really understanding that some of these kids can do a lot of things. So, you know, just to get a chance, just let us have a chance to show you what we can do.
Yeah, I think my biggest challenge has actually really been with administration, and Jessica touched on like other teachers not necessarily understanding the needs of our students. But, you know, really when it comes down to it, having, you know, our students need and require a different set of support. And really as special education teachers, we kind of require that we have a different set of needs from other teachers as well. I worked in a building where it was where it was the mandate of administration that you teach your content from bell to bell. And that's not something that works for my students, because along with teaching isn't just the content. We're working on social skills. We're working on organization. There's so many other pieces to the puzzle that our students need to work on. We need to make sure that there's that understanding with our administration and the other teachers in the building that, you know, we have different needs just as our students have different needs. And it doesn't mean that we're trying to get away with something or not do our jobs. But, you know, teaching math from bell to bell with my special education students, or really any students at that matter, you know, it's when you walk in and they have when an administrator walks in and says that, you know, hey, you're not teaching math right now, but I was working on organization, or we were working on social skills. Or we were having a conversation, because our students will fixate on things that are happening in their lives, and we need to be able to have that conversation and move past that. Or maybe we were working on conflict resolution. You know, there are so many different aspects. We're really, in special education, we have the privilege of being able to educate the whole child, but the systems that are built to kind of keep teachers under, I don't know, I'm saying under control, but that sounds too like, oh, but at the same time, that evaluation process isn't really built for us. And so there definitely has to be that understanding of our students' needs and our needs from administration, and have those, and those are sometimes tough conversations. Definitely being able to navigate that at the district level and kind of know who you need to go to. It's a political nightmare sometimes, but it definitely is a beneficial conversation worth having.
Thank you for repeating. Sorry about that, everyone. I was actually going to take a picture of one of the really good questions we had from Donna, but Donna, we're going to get to that question around question 4 about the general ed curriculum not fitting with some of your students. So we're going to get back to that question. So our question number 2, and you know, a couple of things that you guys said, I do have a kind of, I guess, a follow-up question, is you were talking about like severe and community-based. Can y'all kind of define some of those terms? If I'm a general ed teacher, I may not quite know what you're talking about, so can you define a couple of those terms?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Well, community-based is a program that partners life skills with academics. So if we teach a unit on making purchases or all of our math skills, we also provide an opportunity in the community for them to use those skills. So it kind of partners with, we still offer rigorous academics, but also in the community is the application part of that process. So everything from grocery shopping to getting a state ID to knowing where to go when you need certain access to different agencies, we provide those opportunities for them throughout the school day. So those are students with significant disabilities who spend, I guess it would be more of a self-contained. They spend more time in a self-contained class, not necessarily in, they have a general class, but they're not the ones that are included, that you'll see taking classes with the general ed throughout the day.
All right, thank you. All right, so moving on to our second question. How do you build positive parent-teacher relationships? And I know a lot of teachers, whether I was always a general ed teacher, so whether you're general ed, SPED, how do you do this, right? How in your experience do you build those positive parent-teacher relationships?
I think this one is a huge one for me because when you're working with kids with special needs, you work so closely with those parents that this is like the most important part of the process to me. For one, I think encouraging the kids to get involved in school activities. And if they are involved in other after-school activities or extracurricular things, show up. It means a lot to the kids. It means a lot to the parents when they see you. If the child is playing football, even if they never touch the field, but if that kid is on the football team, I'm going to try to make some of those games and interact with, make sure that child knows I'm there, make sure the parent knows that I'm there. We've had students who are in color guard and the JROTC, so I make sure before that game starts that I'm there to see them march on the field. Those things are huge to parents, to know that they have somebody that's committed to their kid and investing in their kid, and they're seeing you outside of just school, especially kids with challenging behavior. It's a game changer. If you have a child who's giving you trouble in your class, you show up to something and you're going to see a huge difference in your relationship with the kid and their parents.
Yeah, I would add on to that, that, you know, I often say when, you know, because I have students who have those difficult parents, you know, like they get, the parents get labeled in very much the same way that students do. And it's unfortunate, because it really is that individual, and I like to give everybody their own chance. But you know, it's interesting. I actually have several of those supposedly difficult parents right now, and really what it is that it's an understanding, and the place where I come from is they're the parents. Like, they get to be mama bear, they get to be papa bear, and it's, you know, and it's their child. And as much as, and I refer to my students as my kids, because they're mine too. Like when you're on my roster, when you're in my class, when you're in my school, you're one of my kids too. And I will fight for you and advocate for you during the day, and outside of the day if needed. And you know, it's really a matter of communicating with the parents and letting them know that you are really looking out for what is best for their child, and that you are on the same side. It's not this oppositional us versus them thing. It is, we're together in this because we all want what is best for your child. And I think when you're upfront and when you have that conversation, and when you lead with communication, it really does help those parent-teacher relationships so much.
Another thing to add would, you know, put yourself, as a teacher, you should put yourself in the parent's shoes. If this was your child, how would you want people to interact? How hard would you want your child to be taught and to reach their highest destiny? You know, so when you treat your interactions with the child as if they're yours, it's a lot of parents notice that. You know, build outside relationships with the parent. And when I say outside, I mean outside of an IEP meeting. You know, like for instance, we give this huge Thanksgiving dinner and we invite the family, or we sometimes have to limit it because some of the kids have really big families. We may say you can bring 4 people. So you have a mom and a dad, or a mom, or aunt, a grandmother, and a neighbor, you know, but you interact with the parent outside of just having to tell them what the student can't do, or, you know, so interacting with them outside of IEP meetings or a behavior issue, or, you know, just anything like that, it really, really supports a good relationship between you and the parents. Mm-hmm. So anything that you can do besides, you know, going to the students, outside activities, which is a really big thing, have activities that don't have anything to do with academics, and interact with them in those ways too, if possible.
For me, I always tell the parents at the beginning of the year that we're there as a team. We're there to help, you know, their kid achieve what they can. And I always talk about how the IEP is such a fluid document. You know, it's like its own, it's got a life. Like at any point it can come, you can meet to change things as a group. And so I try to establish that positive relationship with the parents, especially when you have, for them to know that there's someone. I've had a parent call me at 3 a.m. because her child had a situation. You know, as long as that parent knows, hey, I've got somebody who's in my corner and who truly loves my kid, they're going to work with you. And if you come in at that angle, like, hey, we're here to make sure that little Johnny achieves what he can, whether it's in community-based or resource, you know, just making sure that they learn, then your parents are going to be more like, hey, okay, maybe she's not so bad, you know?
Yeah, I think one of those extra pieces too is when I switched to having student-led IEPs, you know, and depending on the ability level of the students, but I mean, it was the entire range. Some of them were a bit more involved and some of them needed a bit more coaching. And yeah, it takes extra time to do that. But you know, when we sit in the IEP meeting, it is the most boring thing for a kid to sit there once they're of the age where they're required to be. But I find involving the student in that process helps get the parents involved in that process too. Often by the time they're in high school, a lot of parents are like, we've sat in a million of these before. What's the point of that? And that's really when we're starting to plan that, or when we're planning transition, and we need the full involvement. And so it really does help. But it's amazing to me how much the students really take ownership of their goals when they're the ones who are talking about it in their meetings. And the students just start to shine at that point. I've just had such great. So I know there's kind of some pushback from people on the student-led, because it does take a little bit longer, and our regular education teachers don't necessarily understand that process. It's amazing what that does for that parent relationship as well, when they can see their students really speaking it and advocating for themselves in that process.
And Tracy adds in the chat that she normally starts off the school year by telling the parents, I'm proud to have you on my team. She also includes that they can accomplish a successful school year working together.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have a follow-up question. How do you temper expectations? So how do you, if you have parents who are like, hey, I want my child to, you know, be in calculus and AP this and all that, like, how do you handle that? How do you not have low expectations for the child, but also temper expectations when dealing with students and parents?
I'll start. Stephanie, I'm gonna need your support.
Okay.
You know, what you really should do is have some artifacts. You know, sometimes you literally have to just show them, this is the assessment. This is what your student can do, and work samples and examples. And you know, you might have to muster up some support from other areas to help explain what the outcome of assessments are. But you just have to be very open and show the parents exactly what it is that their student can do academically, and help them find success on that level.
Yeah, we actually, when we did our little practice round of our webinar the other day, Lydia and I were having a little conversation about this. So that's why she said she was going to maybe need my help on that. It's you know, and it's hard. Like, it's this really hard balance, right? Because from the moment these children are born, like, the world is their oyster. Okay. And parents want, like, it's, you know, it's, they want their kids to have everything under the sun, and the possibility. And it's, and it is not a fun conversation. It is not a conversation that anybody looks forward to say that, you know, here are the things that your kid can't do. And unfortunately, IEP meetings tend to kind of focus around that too, which is again why I like the student-led ones. You know, shifting the conversation and talking about, here are what the strengths are, is good. But also, you know, I'm a fan of, especially, you know, most of my special education career was spent working at the high school level, where we would be having our transition meetings. If it's coming from the parent and not the student, then I'm gonna have a conversation with the kid and really ask them what they want to do. If the parent wants the kid to be in calculus and the kid doesn't want to be in calculus, we're not going there. But if the student is going to be, if the student is leading the charge on it and they're advocating for themselves, I'm going to do whatever I can to support them. But we also want to set them up for success. So it's really an individual. Unfortunately, there's no one size fits all on this, but it really has to do with, you know, looking at, okay, so what is the end goal here? And we don't want to shut anybody's dreams down. But you know, it really, that's where it really takes a village on it to see, okay, well, if we can't do this, then what can we do and how can we get there? Because once we start just saying no, we're losing the parent and we're losing the kid. And so that's a really delicate conversation.
I agree with what Stephanie was saying too. And I think also as special education teachers, you're kind of the glue that holds everybody together. So you're the partnership between the parents, the related services, and all these other people that interact with that kid. But it's also that we don't want to talk at them. I think a lot of times we're so comfortable in that lingo. I think I wrote it down when I first started teaching, but we have acronyms for everything. And a lot of those parents are completely lost. And they're in those IEP meetings and they're hearing APE and PT and VI, and they have no clue what we're talking about. So I think we have to be really careful not to talk at parents, but to take time, and just like we do with our kids, we give those little comprehension checks along the way. We need to do that with parents to make sure that they really understand what they're signing. I've had so many parents in meetings and they've had IEP after IEP after IEP and didn't really understand the documents that they were signing. So we need to make sure that that's part of the relationship building, is that you're taking time to make sure that parent understands and they're on board when you're signing for services or services that the child's not going to get. I always try to make sure that my parents really know what we're talking about and explain it. Slow down. Don't throw all those acronyms at them, because a lot of times they are completely lost.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, guys. I'm not having the best of luck with technology right now for some odd reason, but that's okay. We keep rolling. All right. Hopefully that was a really good conversation. Guys, my audience, my 48 people who are here, remember that you have the chat. So put questions in the chat. You can chime into the conversation in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this moving with question number 3. So let me minimize my video panel. Okay, question number 3 is, what are some of the best co-teaching tips? So when you're talking about inclusion, when you're talking about general ed and special ed teachers working together, what are some of those best co-teaching tips from the viewpoint of a general ed teacher and a SPED teacher?
Well, with my experience as a lead teacher in the past, I think one of the number one tips that I could give, if it was to an administrator or if I'm a general ed teacher listening in on this chat, or I'm a special ed teacher and I want reciprocity in the classroom, I think that the teacher should not have such a lack in continuity as far as scheduling goes. One year I'm working with Miss Williams, and then the next year I'm working with Miss Johnson. I think they need to kind of try, advocate for yourself to hold on to the teacher that you're working with, because once you start planning together and working together, you know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and it will be an amazing opportunity to have a wonderful class, a lot of structure. But you need to try, one thing they need to do is try to keep the teams together as much as possible. I think that would be very, very helpful, because it's already a strain for another adult to come into your classroom and you don't even really know why. So once you build a relationship with the teacher, with your co-teacher, I think they should try very hard as a district, as a school, whatever, to hold those teachers together and allow them to learn to work together.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That common planning time is something that is taken for granted. I think when they're making the schedules, they want to make everything work. And often, you know, even when we're doing co-teaching, there's a combination of co-teaching and pull-out. And a lot of those pull-out services are happening during, say, at the elementary level, like during specials time. And so normally when students are at specials, teachers have their plan time, but then there's also a class that's being given to the special education teachers at that time to reduce the amount of time that students are taken out of their regular classes. And I get it, they're trying to kind of do what's best for kids, but by not allowing teachers to have that same common plan time, we're removed from the team. And when we are not part of the team, whether it's the grade level, where it's the content level, it's going to, like, we're already working an uphill battle when it comes to that. If we can't be in all of those meetings, even if they're not all necessarily related to what we're doing in that day to day, like it really stems from being able to be part of a team. Some of those biggest challenges had just been when my schedule was completely opposite and we had to it's really hard to build a relationship with a teacher that you're sharing classroom space with when all you can do is meet with them before school or after school. And that's the uphill battle I don't wish on anybody. And so again, I feel like the message I keep saying is advocate with your administration and let them know, but you really do have to let them know, hey, I need to have plan time, common plan time. And when it can't happen in the master schedule, I've at least in the past gotten it to where, okay, so like once or twice a month, when we would have the math team meetings, I would get a sub and I would be able to go into the math team meetings during that time. And usually the sub was one of the other special education teachers who knows the kids, so it's not just somebody coming from outside, so that way the students are able to not miss out on the experience, because none of us enjoy having a sub. That's definitely not what we're talking about today, but oh my goodness, the SPED thing with subs is really hard too, because it's hard to plan for our kids when we're not there. But being able to be in those meetings and part of a team and have that administrative support to say, okay, we value you as a member of this team, and we're going to give you that time to be with them. It's, you know, sometimes it's a little messy, but it's something that's definitely worth it to be able to have that time together.
Another thing that I would suggest for a general ed teacher would be show some reciprocity. Oftentimes, because I mean us as special ed teachers, mm-hmm. you may think that we don't have knowledge of a subject area. Mm-hmm. But contrary to your belief, we had to go to school for a subject. It's no going to school just for special ed most times. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the special ed teachers also have passed certification tests for social studies and math and English. So don't think just because a special ed teacher is a special ed teacher, they don't have what it takes to support or plan or teach with you. Also, as a special ed teacher, don't be afraid of something that you're not all that familiar with. I mean, if you have to, take a textbook home and study so you can, you know, take part in teaching in the classroom.
I'll just share my thoughts. So I always talk about co-teaching as being a marriage. You're set up into this prearranged marriage and the beginning of the school year, and then by December you're either divorced or you're wanting to get divorced, but you're not able to, or you're happily married. I've been fortunate to have both situations. I even have a hashtag with one of my best friends. We're hashtag read and write, because we taught English and writing and reading, and we're read and write our last names. But that's not the most common situation for co-teaching. So I think if you're able to come up, and it's my Google Innovator project, it's called the Collaborative Prenup. And it's a form that's going to be used for paraprofessionals, teachers, whoever's in the classroom together. They kind of set out a contract at the beginning of the year of who's going to be responsible for what. So everything's laid out so that when you have difficulties, you can always refer to that, and the admin would be notified of that, kind of like they would be like the preacher or the attorney who signs off on the prenup. But until that, I'm still working on that template. It's really hard when you have emails, and if you, like, I've always had, as being a lead teacher, I've had teachers come and say, well, they're blah, 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 like fussing and their heads wobbling, moving, bobbling up and down, and I'm in the middle of teaching class, but I have to step out to talk to you for 40 minutes. There's a lot of times where general ed and SPED teachers aren't talking to each other, and so if there was able to establish some kind of positive relationship and act like adults instead of like middle schoolers, like that I teach, a lot of times things would be better. But I do agree with the common time planning and having the consistency of being able to be with the same person year after year, because then you build that rapport. But now paraprofessionals and teachers are very similar in how teachers need to value paraprofessionals. They're just as equal members of our classroom. They're not there to just sit and look pretty. Like, they can run small groups. They can do all that kind of stuff too. It's kind of a give and take. And it's so one of those things that I always suggest is that you sit down with each other, whether you like each other or not, and figure out what you're going to do, because the kids are going to know if you don't like each other. And they're going to play you against each other, like mom and daddy. Like my 2-year-old that you just saw in the background does, she'll play me against my husband all the time. And so, sorry, this is my soapbox. I just, co-teaching can just be very, very effective in the classroom when done correctly. But it can also hurt the kids. And so it's one of those things that you really have to go into thinking, okay, they went to school. They know what they're doing. I went to school for English. Like, I know how to teach. Read math, not so much. I'd sit on the side with Stephanie. Stephanie, you could teach, or Lydia. Y'all can teach math all day.
Oh, no, not
but it's one of those things. It's like you have to work together. You have to teach our kids how to work together. We should work together. So I'll stop talking now because I get on my soapbox. But
that's an important soapbox to be on, because it's really true. And I think that, I'm knowing what our next question is, that's one of those resources that I think would be really great whenever, I'm excited to see it. I love what comes out of some of our innovator projects. And it's because it's real stuff.
Well, follow me at Kentucky Girl in Alabama on Twitter. That's where I share updates. So.
And I think the other thing for co-teaching too, it has to come from the top, from administration. To be able to do it effectively, you need a common planning time. You also need groups that are small enough that you can provide accommodations, which is my experience years and years ago of having way too many kids to where I felt I couldn't adequately provide those accommodations. But thinking now of some of the co-teachers at my current school who do an amazing job, sometimes it's not always the ESS teacher that pulls them out. Sometimes it's the general ed teacher that pulls them out. So I thought that was wonderful to see that. I think he was teaching social studies, but sometimes it would be a pair that works with them on certain things, or the inclusion teacher. But other times the general ed teacher himself, it was something he really wanted to make sure that they got it, he would go. And the special ed teacher would take over with general ed while he led the small group, just supervising or whatever they were doing. And they had it was a respect for each other. And they were able to swap those roles like seamlessly without behavior issues. The kids didn't act out, when he walked out the room or when she walked out. It was just really smooth, like transitions. So it's got to come from the top down and have a respect for each other for it to work.
Yeah. And I would add on, I think that's great. Thank you for mentioning that. And I would add on to that, a lot of the things that we've said, like, they're things that if it's not coming from the top, you're kind of but you're still in it, because there's probably people listening like, well, I don't have a common planning time, and I don't have necessarily the support, and I don't have the relationship with my teacher. And sometimes it's just a matter of, in order to start that and build that, it comes from, I was a first year teacher who was thrown in halfway through the year. So I started my first position halfway through the year into second grade, and the school decided they were just going to go all to co-teaching. So all of the students who had been pulled out are now in co-teaching, and they're in their classes the entire day, kind of regardless of what the needs necessarily were for the students. And there was a lot of pushback from the teachers. They were not happy with that. There were 7 different second grade classes I was supposed to be in throughout the day, which is just nuts. So managing that was crazy. And I started with the teacher who had the most pushback. And she had a really great setup in her classroom. She'd been teaching she's long since retired. She was in her kind of final 3 years of teaching at that point. And so she was one of those who's closer to retirement and wasn't really wanting to change much. But she had a really great setup. She was doing math centers that like I learned so much from, even having a math background. And I just said to her one day, I said, okay, well, how about instead of you sitting and working with the group of kids at that one center while the rest of them just worked around, what if I sit at that center today? So it was just make a clear swap. It wasn't something that necessarily involved extra planning time. And it was just me saying, how about I do that? And then you can have those conversations with the kids. And that was the day that things changed for her in terms of our relationship, because she was able to just take that breath and not have to worry about, while she was, she could just focus on one thing at a time, instead of when she's sitting down in that center, she's working with the kids in front of her, but also worrying about everything else that's happening, because you're trusting second graders to actually do what you want them to do when they're at 5 different centers and you're trying. And so she really saw the benefit at that point of having more than one person in the classroom to be able to help with that. And even in what was kind of a chaotic system, that was the day that changed things for her. And that was, it was great. So sometimes it's just a matter of saying, hey, how can it's not that we don't have a bunch on our plates and things to do, because trust me, we're planning stuff and we're doing paperwork. We haven't even touched on the amount of paperwork today. But sometimes it's just a matter of building that relationship and taking that step and saying, hey, what's something that I can do, and showing them that you're really dedicated and in this, and that you can do it. And that's not always the easiest thing to do, and it might take a little bit of extra time, but it is something that is worth every ounce of effort that you put into it. Sorry, I'm super long-winded.
Good. No, you're good. That was such a good discussion.
That was.
All right. So what we're going to do now is move to the 4th question. And I know you've seen it already, but how and where do you find resources for your students? Yeah, so that's pretty much it. How and where do you find resources for your students? And then I did add on a 5th question. That's just a really short discussion, but this is the main one, our last one of how and where do you find those resources?
I'll start just from the resource room perspective. A lot of times I use the same materials that the gen ed teachers do. I just kind of modify them for my students, whether it's the passage level or even just the work expectation, or if it's maybe everybody makes their own slideshow. Maybe we do a group slideshow about an Edgar Allan Poe poem. A lot of times I love Teachers Pay Teachers because you can get so much free stuff. And they always have sales, but I don't rely completely on Teachers Pay Teachers, obviously. Or I'll take this stuff and I'll use it and use it as my own. And there's always so much free stuff that you can find that you can always, you can never do the same thing. Because when at least in my classroom, when it works one day, the next day it's not going to work because they've already figured out how to do it, or they figured out the secret to what you're trying to do. So that's what I've done.
I think for students with significant disabilities, it's always a challenge. We don't always have a curriculum that works well for everyone. So you're always kind of pulling things and supplementing, because you have students who are on all these different academic grade levels within your classroom. So you're constantly pull in different resources. So I like to use a lot of instructional games. So I feel like that way I can kind of reach maybe the ones who are a little bit higher, need a little more, and I can do things for the ones who maybe are not at that point yet. But I think, yeah, I think it's a challenge to find resources. We have something now, but it never fits everybody. So you're always kind of working together. That's why you got to be flexible. You have to be able to work with other ESS teachers to kind of pull things together and see, well, if you can talk to, another teacher and say, well, I'm having issues with this. Is there something that you use? They may recommend something that'll fit for that child that, the district hasn't given, that you don't have access to. So you've got to network, got to reach out, talk to each other. There's no lone survivors in special education. You have to work together. You've got to.
And because we have to do so much documenting on so many different things all the time, I found that you've probably heard of it, everybody out there, but the Read Theory program, it's free. It even graphs and tracks the students' learning, and it even leads you to other activities, as the student's teacher, activities that will support, whatever skill, whatever level they're on as far as reading is concerned. So Read Theory is a good thing that I use. Just one other support in all of the many things that we have to do. It's another.
Lydia, can you, is it Read, READ?
Theory.
THEORY?
.com.
Okay.
It's free. It's a free resource. You do have to register your kids. You have to go in and get a password. But once you do all of that, when you have some free time, or you can have some, when you have centers, because we even have that in high school, you can, allow the students to go in, and you can either let them do a couple of lessons, or you can do a time limit. But you let them do those activities, and it helps you out as a teacher by tracking and graphing, because at the end of the school year, you have to have all these graphs and show growth and how much time you spent working on things. So that's something that's free. And it's a good tool. We actually use it. Some of our teachers in general ed use it as well in English classes. Just, because kids are different these days, and you really have to treat everybody like they're special ed sometimes, as far as where to start, because they come in on so many different levels. So, if you want to be effective, you have to know what you're working with. So that's one that I found to be very useful. And the students enjoy it. And the stuff isn't very long. The passages aren't very long.
Mm-hmm.
They just progress with, when you pass, you get something higher. So it's a good program that you can use for documentation.
So we do have a question, guys. The general ed curriculum does not best meet my mod severe students. Can you recommend any curriculums or programs that will better serve the needs of my students? And I think Read Theory was one that can kind of answer this question. But do you have any more?
We are currently using, and maybe Lydia can help me remember the name of our current curriculum. But the one that we're using now is online, and the kids can have a modified login to access it, which a lot of the kids do great with that. But it's
I'm
unique.
sorry, but I had to think. It just came up.
Unique. That's what happens when you don't have school for a month. Unique learning. It's unique learning. Now the district will probably have to purchase it, but it is probably the best that we've had. That kind of covers everything. It's math. It has built-in manipulatives. It'll read aloud for them, and you can use it for a whole group teaching, or if you want to assign things individually. And even for the kids who maybe have a harder time logging in, if they need assistance, it can be, you can simplify it to where they just click on a picture and are able to log in themselves. But unique learning is probably the best that we've had. And also the other challenge that I've had is finding resources when your kids have significant reading disabilities, but you still want them to be exposed to the text that other kids are reading. Like I didn't want my kids, they may be on first or second grade reading level, but I didn't want them reading Clifford books. So I can't think of the name of the publishing, but if you search for it in Google, look for modified text, and my kids were able to read Mark Twain and stories of Huckleberry Finn, but it's on their reading level. It's simplified to where they are still reading age-appropriate things, but on their level. So sometimes it's just things you have to go and get.
create. You have to
It
create.
might be Townsend Press, but any math resources? I know we've been kind of heavy on the reading.
I'm trying so hard to think. It is something free that I found. You can hardly find anything free for math. It's really, really hard. But it's one math, Excel math, I think it's called. Excel math. It's a placement test. You know, it's not a curriculum. However, it's set up in levels. You have like test 1, test A through, I think, F maybe. And so once if the student passes test A, then you give them test B. But what happens is every single problem on the test has every area on the test is like blocked off. Like question number 1 is in a square. Question number 2 is in a square. It may have 2 or 3 questions related to the same area, but it's only in that square. But once you finish, there's a breakdown that tells you exactly what skill. If the student gets this problem wrong, this is a skill you need to work on. Or if the student gets this problem right, this is what the student can do. So like Tawana said and Jessica, we kind of have to just create, find, manipulate curriculum for the kids because there isn't one, but we have such a plethora of learners. How can you? You know, we really can't. But you can, once you get that placement test done, you can take those skills that they suggest the student works on and, you know, find activities that deal with that. And that would be free. I mean, you know, because I use the homeschool program online a lot to find a lot of activities. They have a whole lot of activities from worksheets to projects. It's awesome.
So guys, in the chat, some people are saying thrift stores, half-price books, educational section, readtheory.com, unique learning, Newsella, level passages, tools for math or Dreambox, Prodigy, and IXL, rewordify.com. So these are some ones that are coming up in the chat. So what we're going to do right now, guys, is we're going to take questions because we are pretty much at the end of our webinar. So we are going to go ahead and take questions and then wrap this up. So first question, is there a free placement test for reading that specifies areas of strengths and weaknesses for reading that you all would recommend to be better than all the rest of them?
I would try Easy CBM. I use that a lot for progress monitoring. It's free. I haven't done Read Theory, but I'm going to try that because that sounds awesome. But Easy CBM is just very different levels based off of Lexile, and it's even got math, but it's really great for progress monitoring. Just real quick.
Can you spell that? What did we say? Easy.
EASYCBM.com.
EASY,
yes ma'am, CBM.com.
All right, I'll put it in the chat, but for my people that are, I just put it in the chat, Jessica, but for my people who are watching this in a recording, EASICBM. Okay, then our next question,
wait, one more thing, math, it is called, the free math placement test is called Excel Math, EXCEL Math. It's K through 6 curriculum. However, in Tawana and myself, most of our kids' academic level is not over 5th grade in math. Even though, you know, even though we have our Louisiana connectors, which are the standards that are related to the Common Core, we still have to teach what the kids can learn. So Excel
right.
is that placement test that I was referring to earlier.
Okay. What is the name of the homeschool program you mentioned that you use?
Let's see, the homeschool program.
That was the unique learning one, right?
No, Unique Learning is the program that they actually purchased for
Oh, okay. Sorry, I tried answering that one in the chat, but I said the wrong one. Sorry.
So while she looks that up, I have another question. What assessments are there for very low level students 0 through 4 years old? So I'm guessing that'd be before school level?
Like what kind of, are we talking, what kind of assessments are we talking about? Like, are we talking about like content assessments, or are we talking about trying to figure out like where we are in terms of like ability disability?
So I'm gonna let Donna answer that in the chat. Cassandra asked, do you have, and I know Lydia is still getting the homeschool. I haven't forgot about you guys. Cassandra asks, any science resources?
There's a website called Do and the number 2 Learn, Do to Learn, and they have some science activities, little science experiments, or things that you can try. Anything that's hands-on. So any kind of hands-on experiments, I try to do like maybe once a month with my kids to have something like that's related to what we're learning, because for a lot of them, that's how they learn best, when they're actually doing it. But Do to Learn has some ideas. Oh, there's another website too. I'll have to look it up. But any kind of experiments that you can do. I think it's called Twig Science. But those are things that you can adapt. I found things like about hand washing. Right before all this coronavirus, they had an activity with hand washing with glitter, all that. It was really fun. So Twig Science and Do to Learn.
Donna clarifies, and I know Lydia is still looking for the homeschool information. Donna clarifies her question and says, these are 10 to 11-year-olds functioning at 0 to 5 year level, so need baseline data on what they can do for progress monitoring.
I mean, where I would go for that, and Tawana and Lydia may have better info to add for that, but I would say that that's when, there are like the school psych or whoever's in charge of doing the testing for when students are qualifying for special education services, they would have access to lots of different assessments that can be given. Not all of them are necessarily given in the process of qualifying a student. I would be, there would be like different tests for developmental. I would say that would be a great contact person to start with, because they would be able to tell you what the school has access to. Yeah, I would say that would be definitely something good, because there's probably a lot of developmental things happening there. And they may have some better suggestions in terms of things that help. Maybe if it's like a mini IQ type of thing, and they may also be able to provide some support on those as well, even just helping you break some of those down.
What we use in our school district is called the Staugler, Staugler, the Staugler rubric, and that is what we use for
Spell that
students.
again, Tawana, I'm sorry.
Staugler, Staugler. And it's a rubric that we use for students with significant disabilities, and it looks at where they are with their skills with reading. Like, are they an emergent reader? Are they just beginning? Do they even pay interest to books at all? Can they rhyme? So it's for those students who are just, they're not quite reading yet. But it is a rubric that you can use for them. We also have something called a numeracy rubric that we use for math. And if someone needs that, I can email it. But it's something that the district uses that looks at skills. Can the student skip count? Can the student keep up with the time of day? Do they know the date? Can they read a calendar? So it's those things that for students with significant disabilities, you can measure what they can do and where you're working to get them towards by the end of the year.
And that may almost be something where kind of doing that, it's not quite co-teaching, but just a matter of that team of, I like to team with people who are at the level that my students are. So if students are functioning at a more pre-K level, it may be a matter of having a conversation with, well, what are they using to track progress at the pre-K level or the kindergarten level? And checking with some of those there, you may be able to take kind of some of their scales and some of their lists and modify those for your students as well. And then I'm all about not having to reinvent the wheel. So if I can get somebody else's and start with it, then that's what I'm going to do.
All right, guys. Oh, go right ahead.
I just wanted to tell you that sometimes it's hard to find that rubric, Kathy Stogler, but on the Louisiana Department of Education website, it is there. So it can be downloaded from the Louisiana Department of Education website, the Kathy Stogler rubric.
So what I'm going to do with all this, guys, is once I get the chat, I'm actually going to go through the chat and just probably open up a Google Doc and put all of these links in there so you can have a resource. So, and I will beg Lydia to go find that on the LDOE website and send that to me because she's awesome. And Tawanga to go find that math one that she talked about and send that to me. If y'all can find those and send that, we can give a list of all of these resources. Do we have any other questions, guys? Go ahead and put it in the chat. I know Wanda has had her hand up for like 5 years. So Wanda, I'm going to unmute you so you can ask your question. So if you, Wanda, I'm going to unmute you now.
Oh, I was just experimenting. I don't know what I was doing.
Oh, okay. So Wanda, I'm muting your back, baby.
Okay.
Wanda's like, I didn't have nothing to say. All right.
One other activity that is very helpful, fun, and informative for your students if you have free time. If you need to buy yourself some time to about 10-15 minutes to do something, you probably already do it, I don't know, but it's CNN 10. It's world news.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
world news for on a level that even our students can gather important information. So that's a good activity, and they have questions. So if you want to use it for scoring, you can. Like, did they pay attention? Because they have a few questions at the end that they can answer. Even my students answer them. So, and they're significant. Most of them answer them.
So is it CNN 10?
Yes, ma'am. That's it.
Okay.
They also have a YouTube channel, CNN 10.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So guys, I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself. So I just turned that on. So if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, I think Cassandra raised her hand. So Cassandra, I'm going to unmute you right now. But everybody else, you'll be able to unmute yourself. So Cassandra, I'm unmuting you now.
Yes, it's Cassandra.
Thank you, Cassandra.
I do math and science, and I teach high school special education. My kids is like emotionally disturbed kids. So I was wondering what resources that I have available, because I do math and science high school, but they're really kind of low because it's a special education. Is there anything available for those kind of kids?
So one of my favorite things to use with, I don't have as much experience with the science because we were departmentalized within my special education program. But one of my favorite resources to use, and I promise this isn't a commercial, I used IXL, just the letters IXL. I typed it into the chat earlier. And what I like about that one is that you can mask the grade levels, and it is separated by skill. So you can just have, it's just looking at one thing. And I like the thing that I like about that is it allows the students to work through. If they only need to do 10 problems to get through it, they only need to do 10 problems to get through it. When they do a problem, if they get it right, it gives them one that's a little bit harder. So it's automatically leveling it. If they miss it, it gives them one that's about the same or a little bit lower. And the students work up. What I like about it is it gives them the practice they need. They do have some science on IXL as well. They have some ELA and other things, but it originally just started as math, and that's when I would use it. And what I found was specifically for math, a lot of the behavior issues would come from where the students did not have confidence, and they would, or we had lots of absences. There were just a lot of outside factors. And so even though it caused me lots of, because everybody was in a different spot, I actually put my students on personalized learning tracks. So every kid was working at their own pace. So if they were out sick for a day, when they came back in, they just kept on going with it. There are ways, yes, IXL does have a cost to it. But at the same time, in many places there's funding that's available. But also, it's a matter of when you break it down of the cost per student, it's cheaper than a workbook. So sometimes you have to explain it to administration like that, and just say it that way. That being said, I hear a lot from I've worked with kind of math curriculum directors who are really quick to hate on resources like that, because they say, oh, well, we want the students to be doing these high level problems. But at the same time, we still need our students to be able to show an understanding of those skills. So that was one of my favorite ones that they had. And they do have some science in there. My biggest recommendations, again, is kind of what I said about the testing from earlier is try to team up with one of the science teachers and see what projects they're doing. And even if it's not at your level, maybe it's at the middle school level or at the elementary school level, and you can grab some of those ideas and use them. And you're the expert on your kids on what they can do. So it's really hard to give a one size fits all answer, because this is not what special education is. But I reach out on Twitter. I ask questions, I butt into meetings. I'm that person who will just go in and talk to somebody else on their plan period just to see, hey, do you have any ideas for this? And sometimes it means taking a field trip and getting to join a science class that's a higher level one for the day, because my students are able to, are able to participate in that.
And I'll say right now, guys, with everything happening with COVID-19, if you Google the product with COVID-19 behind it, you'll see what they're giving away for free. So I don't know if IXL is giving away stuff, I mean, at least for now, right?
Yeah, IXL has a 90-day trial right now. So my students are actually on that right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So definitely put whatever product you're looking at with COVID-19 behind it in Google, and you'll be surprised of all the free stuff that you may see rolling your way. Okay, any other questions? Go ahead, Lydia.
I want to know where Cassandra is located.
I'm unmuting you. Oh, go ahead, Cassandra, you're unmuted.
I'm in Texas.
Oh, okay. Well, this is just a suggestion. I mean, I'm in Louisiana. I don't know if y'all frown down upon our educational system. However, if you go to the Louisiana Department of Education website, y'all probably have something similar, but I know ours is very accessible and it's easy to manipulate. And you go and you find the Louisiana connectors. They're like the, like I said earlier, the
Standards.
The curriculum, or the standards, the standards for, thank you, the standards for Louisiana, but the connectors have the standards like broken down or in a similar form. So even if it says, it might say, like, just for instance, you said math and science, but it might say algebra, and it might be, I don't know, for example, you had A plus B equals 10. And then at the bottom of the problem, A might be 5 and B may be 5. And then you just have to, that's it. Even though it sounds elementary, it's still considered algebra, I guess, an algebra problem for a first grade or whatever. But just as an example, that's how they have the Louisiana connectors kind of watered down, but aligned to the real state standards, or the Common Core, which Common Core is everybody's. So if it's a connector for us, it'll be a connector for you as well in Texas. But there are, some suggestions, activities. You have to be creative and maybe go find things to do, but maybe with it broken down the way connectors are, it'll be easier to come up with ideas to teach that subject for, for a lower level student.
All right.
Thank
Oh,
you.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Appreciate it.
Oh, and Cassandra, I would say too, I think having proper materials is also that part of advocating, because you deserve to have tools to teach your students. So if you find some resources or things that work and your district has not given you those, that's part of advocating and speaking up for yourself, that you should not have to create all of this stuff on your own. You need a framework, and they need to give you a framework so that your students can be successful. So I would definitely say advocate for your kids, that you should have a science and a math curriculum to work with. They need to provide that for you.
Yeah. And I would add on to say that the kind of nice thing about working in special education is that there is federal funding for that. So sometimes you just gotta, it's that advocation piece. It's like, no, we are getting extra money for these programs so that our kids can get what they need. And it's like, we have to be able to meet our student goals. They have different needs. So we need to have what they do. And it doesn't necessarily mean spending a lot of money. I try to be careful about what I ask for financially, but I've been fortunate enough that I put it up and I say, this is what it is, and this is the cost breakdown per student for the year. And I've had a lot of luck with that.
And
All right.
another
go
thing
ahead.
too,
Sorry.
Cassandra, that you can use is, sorry, one more thing for Cassandra, Team Cassandra over here. Study Ladder, and it's all one word. Study Ladder is one that you can use, and it has reading, it has math, it has ELA. Those are things that you can pull in, and it's a good one if you want to use it to kind of check and see how much they understood. If you want to use it for progress monitoring, because they have an actual login for that, you can use that. And it was another one too, Study Ladder. Oh, and mathgames.com. It's skill-based. So it's by skill, by grade level. So you can go in and you can use that for progress monitoring. So Study Ladder and Math Games are tools you can use.
Okay. So do we have any other questions, guys? I haven't seen any in the chat, but I've seen a lot of really good resources be thrown in the chat. Do we have any questions before I make sure everybody signed in and get the evaluation and all that good stuff? Any other questions? You can unmute yourself and just start talking, or you can put it in the chat. Going once. Going twice. I thought I just heard a dog. No? No? All right, so I know we went a little long, but this was only, we were done with the webinar. This was the question and answer, but I'm glad that so many people stuck with us during the question and answer. I think we only lost like 3 people, which is awesome. So if you have any questions, definitely I'm going to send an email to everyone who, what do I want to say, who signs in. So first and foremost, these are the people that you've been listening to. You see their email addresses. I'm going to leave this up for a second if you want to go ahead and take a picture of this screen, or if you're like, you know what, I just want to talk to that one person. We'll go ahead and write down that one person's email address. But these are the amazing educators that you have just listened to. I appreciate them so much for giving their time. I mean, they're getting nothing for this except love. So for giving their time on a Saturday, Jessica had to run out. If you saw, her little girl was about to pull her shirt off, so I turned off the video. I was like, oh no! So I turned off her video right quick.
Hungry.
Yeah, she's like, I'm ready to go. So she's like, okay, I gotta go. I'm like, go. So just thank you so much, Stephanie, Lydia, Jessica, and Tawana. I appreciate you more than you will ever know, because I am not a SPED teacher. There's no way I could have held this. And this was actually a requested webinar. Somebody said, like, please do something on SPED. And I was like, yes, ma'am. So thank you so much, honestly, for giving us your time and for being part of the wonderful people who are here, part of their PLN, and to answer questions. I personally apologize for my tech issues. My newer laptop is going crazy. It kicked me out again, so I'm glad I hopped on my old laptop that has never gone out yet. So I don't know what's exactly happening with that, but I apologize for any tech issues. Now, this has been recorded, but because of the ins and outs and all that, I just need to see how the recording looks before I put it out there. So hopefully we'll have a recording of this. So that is it officially for our webinar. The only other question I wanted to kind of let the panel answer a little bit, and this is like a one sentence answer just because of the times that we're in, is I am going to kind of take us back. And I want my 3 panelists left, or anybody who's here right now, if you want to answer this in like one sentence, one word, put it in the chat, unmute yourself. How are you guys dealing with your SPED students during distance learning? And I know that this is something that we wouldn't usually ask, right? But because of the situation we're in, I'm just going to throw this out for like a one sentence answer. Again, put it in the chat, one word answer. Like how are we dealing with our students during distance learning?
Well, you know that I'm not a one sentence answer kind of girl. So
You get two
Okay.
sentences.
Okay, so I mean, obviously I'm working with my preface. This is not my two sentences. My preface is I'm working with students who are gifted, but they're also twice exceptional. So they're not handling this very well, like in many ways. So even though their IQs are higher, does not mean that we're not running into kind of similar problems. So I'm focusing on social and getting the students together in Google Meets to do some games and really just keep that community together. But I'm also, my biggest advice to people is, don't stress out over trying to do everything. Everybody's going to be in the same place. And if all your kid does or all the kids do was read during this time and just read, I would be more than happy. And I'm saying that as a math teacher. Okay, that was more than 2 sentences. Sorry.
All right, Lilia and Tawana.
Well,
that was my fault because I said both your names. Lydia, go ahead.
I would just, we don't have anything that we have been assigned to do particularly over the internet or anything. However, I would hope, and my suggestion would be that parents, we write this long individual education plan. And with my age group, it's a transition plan. And on the transition plan, it's it's 4 sections that have activities that the parent will do to support the transition function of their student. So my suggestion is that they just do those things that they promised they would do throughout the school year. They will be just continuing what we're doing at school and, and supporting it. It's not hard. We have a vocational area, a functional living area, academics, and social. So it's very easy to stay with the functioning area where you can just have your child doing things around the house. I mean, allow them to, chores or whatever, and cooking and so.
Okay. So I'm gonna cut you off. Okay, Tawana. I'm like, we gotta let people go. Tawana.
Okay, well, for us, our district gave us enrichment package for the students with significant disabilities. So I made that available to parents, and I just sent things that would help them kind of keep the current level, not expecting parents to teach anything new, but just things to keep their mind occupied, things that they could read, encouraging them. There's so many authors who are on Facebook or online reading. I think Michelle Obama is going to start Monday. So just reading and things that can help to maintain the skills that they have currently.
So we do have a question. And I think this may be directed towards Lydia, if parents are doing the work, how are you providing and recording required service minutes?
Well, in Louisiana, we aren't with this particular situation that we're in. We received a letter from the Department of Education, federal, where if you're we're just not required to monitor from home IEPs at this time. And I'm going to assume this is basically it, because we haven't been given any instruction or such. When we get back to school, we're going to pick up where we left off. So, you know, pretty much like the rest of the world. I mean, I don't see how anybody in the special ed arena could be doing any real monitoring and reporting or anything at this time. I mean, this is...
So Lydia, Lynn says that she's in Louisiana. Where is that document?
She can go to the Federal Department of Education. It's a letter there. Oh, I'm sorry. I can talk to you. It's go to... I'm talking about the U.S. Department of Education. It spells out, let me see, I just had sent it to someone. It spells out exactly what it is that is happening with us at the time, or how, let me see, just give me 1 second.
Okay, and that's what Alicia is actually putting that in the chat as well. Those requirements, minutes have been waived by the governor. I'm guessing you're in Louisiana too, Alicia, I'm not sure. But we are required to keep IEPs within timeline. So Alicia, what state are you in? Because we do have people from all over. So I don't know if you're talking about Louisiana specifically or a different state. But any other questions before we go ahead and wrap this up? Oh, she's also in Louisiana. Instructional minutes have been waived, but I did not read where specifically stated SPED minutes. So Lynn, I'm gonna kind of let you and Lydia talk that out while I wrap everybody else up. Do we have any other questions? And guys, if you haven't been looking at the chat, there are a lot of people answering how they've been dealing with distance learning, like Google Classroom, skill level packets, 2 Zoom classes per week, all kinds of Google Classroom, daily contact with parents and students, putting activities through Classroom. One person said the district let them check out Chromebooks, so they're using Google Classroom and MobiMax. All right, so just a lot of things in the chat are going on. Okay, so we're gonna wrap
the document, and let me give it to you. It's the United States Department of Education Office for Civil Rights. It was a fact sheet that was put out on March 16, 2020, and I downloaded it to my phone, so I'm not particularly sure the web address for that, but it is the United States Department of Education Office for Civil Rights fact sheet, addressing the risks of COVID-19 in schools while protecting the civil rights of students.
So, so Lydia, if you can send that to me, I'll put it in the Google Drive and send it out as a resource.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see. Tasha, Jessica's email is on the screen. It's jessicareed@dadecs.org. In my district in Caroline, Texas, we created a document that each person who provides services can now add. I remember seeing that document on the USDE doc that she's referring to. Okay, so these are all the email addresses again. You are done.